We are here on Cayuse, Umatilla, and Washoe ancestral lands in Salt Lake Tahoe with Becca and Tommy Caldwell. Becca, you're a mom to two, not only a climber, also a mountain biker. Tommy, you've accomplished some of the hardest first ascents in the world. You are a role model and a climate activist in our community. Thank you both so much for having us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yep.
I think of you both and your family as the OG climbing family for our generation of climbers.
Oh dear.
I know, no pressure.
Yeah.
You also have lived out of your van as a family of four at various points. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of like our full-time climbing community, vans have become like this nesting thing. Like when you decide to have kids, you like buy a Sprinter van. It's like become a thing. It was funny, we were just in Yosemite a few weeks ago and there was like 6 vans and like all these families and it was nuts. And so I think when you have kids, you have this romantic idea that like the van is going to enable us to kind of like keep this version of our previous life before kids going where we travel around and climb. And I think that's somewhat true. I think people do underestimate that it's just not all that comfortable. Like van life as a single person or a couple is a lot easier than van life with the family.
Yeah, when we go in the van, if it's just the two of us, or like we now sometimes divide and conquer and go on our own trips, and we're like, this is luxury right here.
Yeah.
You have all the space, all you need. But then it's also, you know, when the van is full and brimming over and kids from other vans are coming in your van, you know, or
Moving stuff around.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you see all the pictures of van life where everything's like in its place. That is not our van. Like it's always a disaster. Like the kids have underwear on their heads. There's like toys everywhere. It's like, yeah, it's rough in there.
We embrace it.
But we are out all the time. That is true. Like we're in the van, especially these days, like, I don't know, 4 days a week.
Have you come up with any systems that are helpul? Like,
To
I don't
stay
know.
organized?
Yeah. Or do you just embrace the chaos?
Yeah, organized. We're never really
No, I think we try to come up with systems. Our kids each have like a little organizational thing on the back of our, like the driver's seat and the passenger seat in the front. And so they can like put their things in there. And then as we're driving, if they need their headphones, they can grab them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When they get into those independent years where they can help themselves, it is helpful.
Would you recommend like life living on the road for every family, or are there challenges that you think might be harder for some families than others?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. It's hard to say in a blanket, like everyone should do this. I don't think it is like a great fit for everyone, but I think everyone can probably gain a ton of like memories and lessons and all of that living in a small space with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a few things that worked for us is we're not very type A. We don't really sweat the small things. And people who are have a hard time van lifing with kids.
Harder time, yeah.
A harder time van lifing.
Or with kids in general?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about the van life being hectic, but honestly, just having kids is hectic. So I feel like it's kind of the same whether we're out on the road or at home. Our kids have done so much traveling now that I actually feel like it's in some ways easier when we're traveling because they're so much more engaged, and like we tend to have way less of like kids being grumpy or having meltdowns when we're traveling than we do at home.
So we know that not all kids of climbers become climbers. Have there been other activities that you've encouraged your kids to do outside of climbing, and how do you feel about encouraging them to climb?
You know, some kids of climbers are going to really take to climbing. Ours haven't been that way. I feel like the fact that like I'm a professional climber, we climb a lot. Kids don't want to do what their parents do generally. And so I think their path to climbing is probably almost less likely than if we weren't so obsessed about climbing. But having said that, that's the life we live. So they don't love climbing per se, but they do love the life that climbing provides for us. And the older they get, the better they understand that. Like we get to go all over the world and see cool things and have these adventures. And so right now I'm kind of pushing, or we're trying to provide a lot of opportunities for just like family adventuring through climbing rather than focused on like becoming a good climber.
Performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, like focusing on the adventure part more. We went to the Dolomites this last summer and did Via Ferratas, and the kids had an amazing time. They loved it so much. And I think it's more about building the confidence and just having those fun experiences. I'm noticing that they really need to be building self-confidence and to know that they're capable of doing things and all of that. And adventures are such an amazing canvas to do that on our platform.
Well, it sounds like you also have been supporting the ski team. It sounds like reading is big and Legos. Are there other activities that have been really big as they've gotten more independent?
Yeah, we
Exploring.
dabbled in, we tried cross-country skiing. We signed up for a few running races.
Done some tennis lessons.
Yeah, tennis lessons.
Like theater.
I think we just kind of,
choir. Fitz plays
Awesome.
violin. It's like, I don't know. They're in the
Exposing
age
them
where,
to
they
things.
need to figure out what they like.
Awesome.
And I think that's a big thing is we just want them to get excited about something.
Mhm. You mentioned the Dolomites as an international destination. Are there some places you think are better for families and some that are not as good?
I mean, we found Europe to be great. We go to Europe every year, basically. Our go-to with young children was Fontainebleau outside of Paris because it's just like this giant sandbox with boulder problems everywhere. And the kids, even though they weren't so obsessed by the climbing there, they just loved being in the forest with their friends. And we team up with like 3 to 5 other families every year. So we would go there as this cohort. And I remember going to this one bouldering area where you when the kids are really small, you literally just wheel a stroller straight to the boulders. And but then when the kids are napping, you're trying to find a place that you can like hide them where they won't get woken up by the boulders, but you can hear them if they cry. And so I remember one time trying to like go find all these little nooks with the stroller, and I'd go to this one and be like, oh, there's a stroller there, and
sleeping
there were
baby
just like
over there.
sleeping babies all over
Like
the woods.
everywhere.
Yeah,
The prime real estate. for stroller
totally.
naps.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, when you have young kids and you're going to all these places, you're rediscovering things and seeing it from your kid's eye, and you're like, look at this. Like it's your first time seeing Fitzroy, and it gets so exciting.
Yeah, and when they're really little, you can just put them in a backpack and you can go hiking all day. So you can really be deep in the mountains. When they get a little older and they're heavy to carry, it changes a fair
There's
amount.
like an in-between phase.
Totally. The transition
Yeah.
from like non-toddler to just toddler has been tough for us because we thought it would get easier as our little one got older, but we're finding that the challenges with the toddler like actually preclude things that we were able to do with the baby,
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, so I remember we tried when our kids were kind of backpacking became just too heavy, right? When you're having to carry the kids and all this stuff. So at one point I was like, let's try a bike packing trip. And so we did like this 3-day bike packing trip where the kid would, one of the kids would go in a stroller, the other one would go on like a seat behind the bike,
Like
and then
the
you
bike
could carry.
trailer.
And that was a really fun trip. Like I kind of wish we would have done more of that.
Yeah.
So, Tommy, you just went up El Cap with your eldest. He's 11.
Yeah, we didn't go all the way. We just camped up there one night. Yeah.
Spent the night up there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How was that?
It was super fun. Yeah, I mean, I taught him how to Jumar. I had done a El Cap route, and then we had actually left a bag in the middle of the wall. And so I was like, let's just Jumar up there and have a night of camping. And I wasn't sure how Fitz would react being that high off the ground, but he had no problem with that at all. We went up there, it was like a perfect night, and he was like, why doesn't everybody do this? Like, this is way cooler than just normal camping. And I'm like, well, not everybody has access to this. So for him, it was like the best experience ever, but it was only because I know so much about how to do it and how to make it safe. And
He had a good guide.
Yeah. Yeah. He called and he's like, got to the ledge and we ate this and it was the best food I've ever eaten. And it was the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen. And I was like, okay, he's feeling the magic. Yeah.
Yeah, and we bring like hot chocolate and marshmallows, and we just did all these little things. I mean, that was a success story. It doesn't always go that well, but that was great. And I think next year I'm trying to talk him into going all the way up the wall because it was super fun.
I know your dad took you on adventures when you were a kid. Was there anything that surprised you being in the dad role?
I mean, my dad had this like incredible superpower of going on adventures and making me believe that suffering was like the stuff of life. Like he made me very good at suffering, and I loved it. Like I loved very arduous things. I haven't been as good at that with my kids. Like they don't like to suffer that much. I think one thing that's a little bit surprising to me about our vibe with our kids is like I'm generally the one that's like, we got to keep this as fun as possible, and Becca's more the one that is like, we have to build like the grit into our kids. Like I remember when Fitz was like 4 years old, one time we were just going on on a random hiking day, and we were all set on going hiking, and Fitz is like, I don't want to hike. Becca's like, you need to be a team player. We are hiking. This is like a thing. And this is kind of going against making it fun. I'm like, we are forcing him to hike. And it even came to the point where Becca was like, if we don't go hiking right now, I'm taking away all your toys. And she did. She took away all of his toys. We came home, she took away all of his toys.
Amazing.
But it wasn't because he wasn't hiking, it's because he wasn't being a team player. And I was very distinct about that.
Yeah.
But also, like, maybe don't air that. I don't know if it's good.
Okay,
but then also,
but it
in
worked.
the end, it wasn't, well, I don't know if it worked. It was better because I think he had too many toys.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, our lives are so much more peaceful now without this, like, clutter. And he was much happier. That might be an example of, like, parenting gone desperate.
That was an extreme example, but I was like really proud of her in the end because I'm like, maybe I'm just too soft with them.
I was gonna say you being soft.
Which people don't think that would be the dynamic since I'm
Yeah.
like the professional climber and I was raised with this dad that was like incredibly good at building grit. She's the hardcore one, honestly.
We're better or worse, we'll see.
And so I think we think about that all the time. Like, should we make our kids do this stuff? And I've generally been like, no, it has to be fun. But honestly, I'm realizing now that sometimes you got to make them do it. That's kind of where I am. Sometimes you got to pick
but
the right
mostly
moments.
you want it to be like more everything's fun, but occasionally it's like, yeah, we all have to do stuff we don't want to do sometimes because we're part of a family unit, and like just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean the rest of us are not going to do it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking also in this today's world where so many people, their basic needs are met. If you just do what the kids want to do, they just want to play video games all day. You know, so like you got to help them acquire that taste for adventure, and sometimes that does take a little bit of making them do it.
Generally, if you're suffering a little bit or a little uncomfortable, that's often when things are worth it, you know, or to get your brain smarter, you need to like be uncomfortable learning things, you know, it's like growth is uncomfortable.
Did you experience growing pains going from 1 to 2?
Of kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, one, you're kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. And then 2 is like, this is crazy. Balance is definitely a hard thing to come by. And I think in our particular situation, like we have slightly more traditional roles where Tommy is like working more and I'm taking care of the kids and like enabling him to work. But it's like our family, like, dream that we've established.
Yeah.
Like if I'm working all the time, we can't go on the trips that we want to go on. And so we've kind of prioritized like family flexibility, and to ensure family flexibility, Tommy is able to do his job, which has to travel, and we get to come along with that sometimes. And then I'm like filling in, like managing properties, taking care of the kids, managing our like bookkeeping, you know, like kind of doing all the other things. And we're like, this is what we've chosen. And I think at first I was like, I need to be like, I was running more. I'm like, I need to be running. I need to be like climbing hard. I need to be doing all these things. But then I also need to be a mom, but I need to show up for my kids, but I need to be a wife and I need to enable all these things. And so it's like you have so much capacity and you want to be great at all the things. I mean, I've always viewed it like the pie. Like the pie doesn't grow, but suddenly you have this huge chunk that takes up. And so how do you figure out the rest?
Yeah, I feel like having kids force this into a more traditional role where like one person becomes the caretaker and the other one's kind of the moneymaker, and that happened to us. And we really kind of distinctly decided not to get a lot of help. And I see a lot of other parents these days like hiring nannies and bringing them on all their trips. We didn't do that. But that does enable people to kind of like live their, you know, professional climbing lives more like what it was like before they had kids.
Yeah, I say every family has strengths and weaknesses. Like some families' strengths are external childcare, and some are like having a really like pretty smooth dynamic and partnership where it's the roles are clear and it works, you know?
And like your own boundaries and what you're okay with. Because I found I was like, if I'm the mom again, I need to raise these kids. Like they're my job. And I wasn't good at getting childcare or getting help from other things because I'm like, I have to figure out how to do this because this is my role.
Yeah.
And I think there's other people who do a better job at that. But then you're like, okay, I'm giving up time with my kids, which I think is completely fine and healthy and a good thing to do. But some people have, like, it's hard to balance that and juggle that too. But I did find once I had kids, when I had opportunities to get out and do stuff, I was like, I have to make the most of it. And when it's like when you're pregnant and your body's changing and you don't get to just do whatever you want to do, it's almost like what you want is being threatened a little bit because you can't have it all. And I found after having kids, I was like, no, I want to go train and I'm going to go do that and make it happen. Where beforehand, you kind of took it for granted a little bit that you could like just go and do whatever. I climbed the hardest I've ever climbed like a year ago. And so
Awesome.
it's just like, yeah, it's like knowing that it's just a wild journey, you know, and it feels like your feet are being pulled out from under you, or you might never get to do what you want to do. And I have some friends with young kids, and I'm like, hey, I'm climbing my strongest I've ever climbed, and my oldest is 9, and that's maybe not great because I'm like, took me a decade.
No, you're still doing it though.
Yeah.
Like you have to stick with it to get there too.
Yeah.
You know? You all have been parents for more than a decade, but for our viewers who maybe are new parents, if you think back to newborn days, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Depends on how deep I want to go.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, for me, like for a dad, the newborn phase was hard. You know, it's kind of hard. Like, I don't think you feel connected with the child the same way that a mom does. So the kid you love them and you want to hang out with them, but it's not like that fun to hang out with them, you know? And that just increases over time. Now, hanging out with my kids is like all I want to do because they're like adventure buddies. I think for a mom, you really loved hanging out with them right from the start.
I mean, it was all the things. Like, it can't just be one or the other. It was like so special and like sweet, and just like I was fortunate enough to be able to breastfeed, and that like felt really special. And just like giving birth to a child is also this crazy thing that you're like, what was that? Like, what happened? You know, so it's like there's all this sweetness, the like mobility of being able to like just strap them to you and go places and watching them grow like so quickly. But then if you go one level deeper, you're like, oh, the nights and like the diaper change, all the things. Yeah. I think one thing that you mentioned, you were talking about feeling like isolated or lonely and stuff. And I think that when the kids are younger, I was like, I'm just going to have a little buddy with me all the time on all the trips we go on. And then I had my little buddy and I was like, oh, this is like, I have this person with me, but it's not the same. Like there is that like loneliness and isolation and stuff, or parts of that. And I remember talking with friends like, hey, this is a phase of life when your kids are young that feels like that just exists, even though there's someone there with you all the time.
What would you say to a mom who's feeling that isolation?
I would say like reach out to people, because like with my young mom friends, I'm like, it might feel like this. And I don't know if I really have much to fix it, but I just think knowing that it's a thing and it's okay and it will change.
I mean, I think the thing to fix it is like the times that have felt the best for us, I think, is when we found that village, right? Like reach out to the other parents, try and team up for things like, and then when you're with the kids, then the kids are with each other and you have the things. But then also when you're not with the kids and you're just out with the other parents, it's really great. You talk about all the problems that have arisen and you get to share information. And one really funny thing that's happened for me is like the dad climber scene is like the only scene I climb with, because when you're out with a bunch of dads and you're climbing, they're just like, we feel so lucky just to be at the crag today. And then if you're with people that don't have kids, they're like, oh, it's like too hot, my fingertips are cut. You know, they're like thinking about all these things that just seem so mundane.
Parenthood is like soak in a bottle. When you finally get to climb, you're like, I don't care about any of this stuff that used to annoy me.
Yeah. You're like, we're here, we're doing it.
Yeah. And so like the dads are the most overstoker people out there, and I love that. I think it's really fun.
Is there anything you think the industry could do better to support families? My big thing is supporting moms with potentially like childcare at gyms. Like that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we got lucky because our climbing gym that we went to when the kids were young was Movement in Boulder, and they did have childcare, and it was incredible. We're kind of like, wow, we can. No, they don't anymore. And so we got to like put the kids in. I think you could have up to 2 hours, and for us to be able to go and climb while the kids were in there was kind of great because we like didn't have regular childcare at all.
I feel like climbing gyms used to be like these community centers in the cities, and now they've all consolidated and they've become more like strength building factories or something. And so they have less of a communal vibe, which is probably harder, honestly. They don't have childcare anymore. Maybe that could be fixed. I don't know. Probably childcare facilities and climbing gyms don't pencil out for the shareholders.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think like kids pencil out for corporate bottom line ever.
Yeah, Europe has it figured out. They have kid climbing areas at the climbing gyms. They also have kid sport climbing areas, like bolts every 3 feet.
Oh, wow.
They've got, picnic tables for lunch at the crags sometimes. The approaches are minimal. Like the whole scene in Europe is just
Well, even just
way
at the
better set up.
hotels in Europe,
Yeah.
like they have like cribs already set up, and they have like kid placemats and stuff at restaurants, like booze. I don't know. I found that in general, they accommodated kids better.
Yeah, and South America is kind of the same way. They're way more in tune to the kids scene. Like something about North America is we're kind of botching it in that way.
Yeah, we totally are. Like, good
Nuisance.
luck.
Yeah,
Like,
so people watching this,
you're
just
on your
travel
own.
overseas
This
if you
entire
can.
society is made for adult people.
Yeah.
So as far as the transition to having school-age kids, if you're living life on the road, that I imagine could be a challenge once you have kids who are getting into the Monday through Friday, like school age. So how have you accommodated academics? Like what have you talked about as far as that transition?
I feel like this is still a bit of a crux in our life because we are like fortunate enough to have the opportunity to travel, and we prioritize that when we can. But when Fitz was nearing school age, like when we were home, we would put him in preschool, and the preschool was flexible. And then we're like, school, like is public school flexible? And they're
they?
less. I mean, I think it depends.
Some are, some aren't.
Some are. Yeah. It was a smaller district, and they're like, you can unenroll your kids from homeschool and say you're homeschooling them for large chunks of time. And then since you live here, like we have to accept them. So then you just re-enroll them.
So would you get curriculum from the school?
Mm-mm. We had to come up with our own. Maybe we could have worked closer with the teachers, but it was first grade.
And they're both in public school now.
Yeah.
Would you go back to homeschooling?
Well, so I think that you specifically, like, man, did a phenomenal job when they were really young. But then when we tried to put them in a normal school system where they got homework when we'd pull them out, that was incredibly frustrating to me. Like trying to be in Yosemite and wanting to go climbing on this beautiful day and being like, we got to do homework for half the day. And the kids are fighting with us because they want to be out doing stuff. Like I didn't like that scene.
And that's what our current scene is now, that they're in third grade and sixth grade. Like they have to do the work and they have to keep up. And nor do we want them to like have these gaps in their curriculum because then it's harder to understand what is coming next. And so figuring out that balance, like we know some people who they do like unschooling or whatever. And I'm like, maybe their kids don't know these random things, but they're going to be like highly functioning humans because they have to manage like getting the groceries for everyone. And they're like creative. It's just like, I think life skills, it's almost more important to get life skills maybe than it's like the balance.
I don't know. I come from New England and was like,
education and academics.
Yeah, I was like, are you going to
everything.
Yale or Harvard? And it's really hard for me to shake that.
Yeah. Well, me too. I think that it was like you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you do all the things in the step. But then I see Tommy and he went to high school and school wasn't where you thrived, it seems like, but he's a super successful human. And so I think that opened the eyes where I'm like, I don't know, are our kids going to go to college? Where before meeting Tommy, it would have been like, my kids are definitely like, this is the progression of what you do. And so.
But Fitz is super academically inclined. And part of me wonders if it's because he owns it, because that's not us. It's like we want him to climb, so he wants to go to school. And so I'm like, this is kind of working out. It's fine that way.
So Tommy, you've been on a few pretty major expeditions since becoming a parent. You did early on the Fitz Traverse down in Patagonia, and most recently an Alaska biking, sailing, climbing trip. In some of the film depictions of those expeditions, you've mentioned feeling conflicted with the risk of the adventure now that you're a parent. Can you tell us a little more about the conflict?
Yeah, I mean, what I do is risky, and that's irresponsible as a parent. So I'm always trying to keep that risk below this, undefined line of what I think is responsible. I mean, I think I choose the climbing objectives differently than I did before I was a parent, but I don't feel differently. Like I have other friends that are parents that they get up there on a mountain and they're like, it wigs them out now that they're parents. That's never happened to me. I never, was doing things that I thought I would die at before I had kids, and so I'm still not. So my feeling on the mountain hasn't changed that much. The other thing is I think people think I must be away from the family a lot, but I honestly wasn't away from the family for more than 2 weeks until last year.
We did have like a 2-week rule early on that was like negotiable, but we were kind of like, let's try not to be more apart for more than 2 weeks at a time while the kids were super young.
Yeah.
Mostly for my well-being.
And so that's why they would come with me to South America, and we were very lucky that we could make that happen.
So what's the longest now?
Now last summer I left for 2 months, for a solid 2 months. And I felt like it was like the kids are just way more independent, and I think it's easier for you when I leave now.
Did you do anything explicitly to support Becca for the 2 months you were gone? Like, were there social network that you like made sure you had in place, or anything that you talked about that was particularly challenging, knowing that she was going to be solo parenting?
Nope.
It's probably better that way.
Well, but I know myself and what I need. And so I was like, I have a friend who travels a bunch, and I was like, I'm going to be a little bit lonely. Like, you should come and stay with me. And she's like, great, I'd love to support you in that. And I was like, I know I'm going to need people around me and to have that support. And so I set myself up for success.
Like that trip specifically, I feel bad for leaving 2 months. And I think you were super aware of that. And so you were trying to help me not feel that.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I'm always like trying to encourage you to go on trips. And then when you're away, I'm like, I'm thriving. But it's different when it's like 3 days versus 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. With Tommy gone for, 2 months, like pursuing an objective, what has reentry been like for you all, like on both sides?
It's been rough sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point in our relationship, I'm always like, reentry's always a little rough because I've been doing everything the way I want to do it, and like it's been going, it's like the house is the way I want it. The kids are, like things are going the way I want it. And so it's hard to adapt to like another person being like, well, we're blowing up the scene, or like, why is that over there now? And I think that's with any partner with or without kids, but maybe it's slightly heightened with kids.
I mean, when I leave, I really miss the family and I really miss Becca. So when I come back, I want to be with them. And I think Becca's at this place where it's like, you were gone and I had everything on my shoulders and I need a break. So that's been hard at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I get back, I'm like, first thing is she wants to check out.
Come here. And I'm like, I just want to go alone.
Yeah.
I need to go take care of myself.
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, it sounds great.
And we're learning that more all the time.
Yeah,
I think now I know to expect that.
So we're wrapping it up. How has having kids enhanced your adventure lives as a family and individually?
I mean, I had this thought the other day. Like, I think in conversations like this, we talk so much about the friction points. But I had this thought literally yesterday. I was like, having kids is the best decision we've ever made. So there's something there that's hard to articulate that enhances everything. Like, I'm like, the adventures that we go on, like my favorite trips I've ever been on in my whole life, and I've done a lot of trips, are ones with the kids. And so there's something that just is so much more complete having them there for me.
When you go on an adventure with your kids, you're like, oh my gosh, we did something. It feels like a big accomplishment a little bit, even as parents, of like, we made that happen. And I think now too, we're like, okay, what are our values, and are we living out our values? And there's been times where we're like, I don't know if we're living out those values. And I feel like we're getting to a point where we're like, we're living that more.
Yeah. And maybe it feels so good now because of the friction points of when they were younger. I think we had to kind of go through that adversity to feel how fulfilling it is at this point. And that's like where we are right now, which is pretty exciting. So all the young parents out there just know, at least for us, the future is so good.
Awesome.
Yeah. But now we're going to like hit puberty, and who knows what that's going to bring. We're like, we have this
tiny
small
little
window where it's great and they want to spend time with us and they're up for doing stuff. And then who knows, maybe like I have a friend, and her parents like took her on the Haute route when she was like 12 or something. And she's like, I was so bummed because all I wanted to do was be at Rachel's pool party. And she's like, and I'm like, that's probably in our future.
So close.
Yeah.
So we're enjoying this window. Interview us again in 3 years.
Yeah, I said that the other day. I was like, we have to make everything about the family right now because this is the time. Like right now is the time. I feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I wanted to say earlier that I didn't is having, like, when we had one kid, when it was just Fitz, I was like, we are killing this. We're such good parents. We're in love with each other. This is great. Once Ingrid came along, I was like, I'm not sure we're killing this anymore. And we kind of like don't like each other as much. And there was a period of time that was pretty hard for us with 2 kids. But now I think it's come full circle, and all the people that just have one kid look at us with a lot of admiration. They're like, it's so great that they have each other. And one thing that Becca has been so good about is instilling the importance of loving your sibling. Like our kids really love each other and they take care of each other. And that has been hugely beneficial to adventure life because we know that when we don't have all the other kids around, when they're not at school, at least they have each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually is a really good point. We've been on trips with other families that have only kids and like, can we please take one of your kids to like come for a play date? And we're like, our scene is good right now. They've got each other. They're playing together.
Well,
Yeah,
amazing. Thank you. My big reveal is I'm actually 10 weeks pregnant.
Oh,
Thank you.
Just
You
know
made me
it's
write so much.
Just know it's going to suck for like 2 years.
A while.
Yeah,
And one of the reasons I was really excited about talking to you too is you're the first family with kids, 2 kids of different ages. So I just really appreciate you making the time and contributing your voices to what I hope will be a resource for the community.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you both so much for your time.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, it was fun.